I want to start with something that genuinely kept me up at night when I first stumbled across it. I was sitting there scrolling through housing listings in California and thus kind of torturing myself the way a lot of us do. And I kept seeing the same thing over and over. $800,000 for a two-bedroom. $1.2 million for something that looked like it needed a complete renovation. $650,000 for a condo with a parking spot that costs extra. And I just remember thinking, is this actually what it costs to live here now? Like, is this just the reality we all have to accept? And then I went deeper. I started looking at smaller towns, rural areas, places that don't show up in the glossy California lifestyle content. And I found something that genuinely shocked me. There are towns in this state, real towns, with real houses, real streets, real neighbors, where you can buy a home for less than what most people spend on a car. Not a mansion, not a plot of land in the middle of nowhere, an actual house. Sometimes with a yard, sometimes with a mountain view or a river nearby. The average California home right now costs over $850,000. The average new car costs around $48,000. These towns exist in the gap between those two numbers, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. I spent a lot of time going through Zillow data, housing reports, and real listings to put this list together. We're going in descending order, starting with number 10 and building all the way to the place that genuinely made my jaw drop. So stay with me, because number 1 is something else entirely. Number 10, Susanville, Lassen County, Northern California. Susanville is the kind of place that most Californians have a vague awareness of without actually knowing anything about. It's way up in the northeastern corner of the state in Lassen County, sitting at about 4,200 feet elevation, surrounded by pine forests, wide open land, and the kind of silence that people in cities would genuinely pay a premium to experience for just one weekend. I'll be honest, before I started researching this video, I probably couldn't have pointed to Susanville on a map either, and I think that's exactly why it's still affordable. It hasn't been discovered, it hasn't been hyped. Nobody's making Instagram content about moving to Susanville, and so the prices haven't been inflated by outside attention. Homes here sit well below $250,000. And for that, you're getting real square footage, usually a yard, and in many cases more space than you'd get in a $900,000 box in the Bay Area. The nearest major city is actually Reno, Nevada, which is about 90 miles away. So if you ever need a proper urban fix, you're not completely stranded. But the day-to-day reality of Susanville is small-town California life. People wave at each other, the roads aren't gridlocked, the air smells like pine. The local economy runs on healthcare, government jobs, and some retail. Nothing glamorous, but it's functioning. And for anyone who's been working remotely and quietly, wondering whether they actually need to keep paying $2,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in Sacramento or San Jose, Susanville has a pretty compelling answer. You could own something here, right? Not rent, own. And that difference matters more than most people realize until they have been renting for a decade and have nothing to show for it. Number 9, Clear Lake, Lake County, Central California. Here's something most people don't know. California has a lake, a massive, gorgeous, entirely natural freshwater lake that sits completely within state borders and is actually the largest of its kind in California. It's called Clear Lake, and the town that wraps around the southern end of it is called Clear Lake. When I first read that, I thought there had to be a catch. A lakeside town in California? That has to be expensive. But the median home price in Clear Lake sits around $220,000. And the cost of living index there actually falls below the national average. Not just below the California average, below the national average. That's genuinely rare. Clear Lake has a complicated story, and it's worth being upfront about that. The town has gone through serious economic hardship over the years. There are parts of it that are still working through that history, and it's not the kind of place you move to for a polished, amenity-rich lifestyle. But that's also exactly why the opportunity exists. Property here is cheap because the town hasn't fully recovered yet. And some people look at that as a red flag, while others look at it as a chance to get in before things turn around. The lake itself is genuinely beautiful. People fish there, boat there, and wake up to water views that would cost you an absolute fortune anywhere near the coast. The surrounding hills are rolling and green in spring, golden in summer, and the whole area has a quiet, unhurried quality that grows on you. It's about 2 hours north of San Francisco, and as more people get priced out of the Bay Area and start looking further afield, Clear Lake keeps coming up as a name worth paying attention to. At $220,000, with an actual lake in the picture, it's hard to dismiss. Number 8, Tule Lake, Siskiyou County, far northern California. Okay, we are now heading to a part of California that feels like it belongs in a completely different state, or maybe a different planet. Tule Lake is a small farming community at the very top of California, right near the Oregon border. And the landscape around it is unlike anything else in the state. You've got flat, wide agricultural fields stretching in every direction, ancient volcanic rock formations rising out of the earth. The Lava Beds National Monument is right down the road, where you can walk through underground tunnels, lava tubes, formed thousands of years ago by volcanic activity. It's the kind of scenery that makes you stop and think about how old and strange this world actually is. Home prices here range from around $118,000 to just under $200,000, which puts Tule Lake in a category that barely seems real when you say it out loud. Under $200,000 in California for a house. In a place with this kind of scenery around it, the farming community here is tight-knit and self-sufficient. Horseradish and grain are among the main crops, and there's a real agricultural heritage woven into the identity of the town. This is not a commuter suburb. It's not a tourist destination. It's a working community in a remote, beautiful, genuinely underrated corner of the state. Now, I want to be straight with you. Tule Lake is not for everyone. The population is small, the services are limited, and the winters can be harsh up at that elevation near the Oregon border. But if you work remotely and want to own a home outright without spending the next 3 decades underwater on a mortgage, or if you're someone who values wide open space and natural history over convenience and nightlife, Tule Lake offers something that's almost impossible to find in California anymore. And home prices have already more than doubled there since 2012. So the secret is slowly getting out. Number 7, Earp, San Bernardino County, Eastern California. I have to be honest, when I first came across Earp while doing research for this video, I thought I'd made a typo or misread something. A town in California named Earp, as in Wyatt Earp? Yes, exactly that. This tiny community in San Bernardino County, sitting right on the Colorado River on the California-Arizona border, was literally named after one of the most famous figures of the American Wild West. That alone makes it one of the most interesting entries on this entire list, but the housing prices make it genuinely worth talking about seriously. Homes in Earp sit at around $179,000 right now, and what's fascinating about that number is the journey it took to get there. During the pandemic, when everyone was suddenly desperate for remote land and cheap property, prices here surged all the way past $260,000. Then interest rates climbed, the remote work frenzy cooled down, and prices dropped by nearly $100,000 in just 2 years. That's one of the sharpest reversals of any small California town in recent history. So what you have right now is a window. Prices are lower than they've been in several years, the Colorado River is essentially your backyard, and you're living in a place with a name that has actual legend behind it. For the right person, that combination is genuinely exciting. The lifestyle here is desert and river living in its purest form. Warm winters, hot summers, access to the water, and the kind of solitude that either sounds like heaven or a nightmare, depending on who you are. There's not much commercial activity in Earp itself. You'd need to cross into Arizona or drive to a larger town for most errands. But for someone who wants a riverside property in California for the price of a moderately equipped pickup truck, Earp is real and it's available. Number 6, Bodfish, Kern County, Southern Sierra Nevada. Bodfish, I know. The name makes you smile. But the moment you see where it is and what it costs, you stop laughing and start paying attention. Bodfish is tucked into the hills just west of Lake Isabella in the Kern River Valley, at the southern end of the Sierra Nevada range. It's mountain living, pine trees, clean air, the Kern River running nearby, and views that you'd fully expect to cost $500,000 somewhere like Mammoth or Big Bear. Here, the median home price is sitting around $191,000. What I find particularly interesting about Bodfish is how stable it's been. A lot of the smaller, more remote towns on this list had wild price swings during and after the pandemic, shooting up, crashing down, bouncing around. Bodfish had its surge too, but prices didn't collapse afterward. They settled and then started climbing again slowly. That kind of steadiness in a small market usually means one thing: people who found it decided to stay. Real demand, not speculation. The outdoor recreation here is genuinely exceptional for the price range. Isabella Lake is basically in your backyard. The Sequoia National Forest is close. Fishing, hiking, kayaking, and camping are not weekend road trips from Bodfish. They're just Tuesday evening activities. And on a clear night, the sky out here is full of stars in a way that people living in cities have genuinely forgotten is possible. The town has been quietly gaining attention among retirees especially, and it's easy to see why. Low prices, beautiful surroundings, a relaxed pace, and Bakersfield is close enough for anything you need in terms of medical care, shopping, or a taste of city life. For $191,000, Bodfish gives you a quality of life that people in coastal California spend 10 times as much trying to approximate. And look, if you're watching this and finding it useful, this is the part where I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. It's free. It literally takes 1 second, and it means you'll see every video we put out. We find this stuff so you don't have to spend hours going down the rabbit hole yourself. Number 5, Weldon, Kern County, Kern River Valley. Just a few miles east of Bodfish, following the Kern River deeper into the valley, you hit Weldon. Same county, similar scenery, similar price range, but enough of its own character to deserve its own spot on this list. Weldon sits right along the Kern River near the eastern shore of Lake Isabella at the foot of the southern Sierra Nevada mountains. The median home price is around $195,000, and for that you're getting genuine access to one of the best river fishing spots in Southern California, mountain views in multiple directions, and a community that still feels like the kind of place where your neighbors actually know your name. I want to tell you something about Weldon that I think gets lost when people just look at the numbers. This isn't a place people ended up at because they couldn't afford anything else and just gave up. A lot of the people who live in Weldon chose it deliberately. They drove out there, looked around, breathed the air, stood by the river, and thought, yeah, this is where I want to be. There's a difference between a cheap place and a place that happens to be affordable, and Weldon falls solidly in the second category. The housing market backed that up after the pandemic. Prices ran up like everywhere else. But instead of crashing back down when the frenzy ended, they stabilized and started creeping upward again. People who came during the pandemic and found Weldon didn't leave. They stayed. That kind of organic retention is one of the strongest signals that a small community has real long-term appeal. For outdoor people, and this is genuinely a place for outdoor people, Weldon is close to paradise. The Sequoia National Forest wraps around it. The fishing on the Kern River draws people from all over Southern California. And Los Angeles, despite feeling like it belongs to a completely different world, is only a few hours south on Highway 14. You can have the mountain river life and still make it to a concert or a specialist appointment in the city without it being a major ordeal. Number 4, Bieber, Lassen County, Northern California. We're back up in Lassen County now, even deeper into rural Northern California than Susanville, at a place called Bieber. And before you say anything, yes, the town has been making the same joke about its name since long before the pop star was born. Bieber, California, has been around since the early 1900s. It was here first. Bieber sits in the Big Valley, a wide flat basin surrounded by mountain ridges in the far north of the state. The landscape has that classic cinematic quality of rural California. Golden fields, big skies, pine-covered slopes in the distance, and a stillness that feels almost foreign if you've spent most of your life in a city. The median home price here is under $175,000, making it one of the absolute cheapest places to buy property anywhere in the state. But here's the thing I want to make clear about Bieber, and about places like it. The cheapness isn't the main selling point for the people who actually live there. Ask someone in Bieber why they're there, and they're not going to say, because I couldn't afford anything else. They're going to tell you about the space, the community, the pace, the fact that they know their neighbors and they don't have to fight anyone for anything. There's a quality of life here that's completely invisible in a price tag. The housing market in Bieber has been fairly stable, which is actually meaningful in a world where small rural markets can swing wildly. Prices grew through the 2000s, spiked during the pandemic when remote workers started looking for cheap land, and then leveled off rather than collapsed. It's a small market where individual sales move averages around, but the general trend has been one of quiet, steady value. For remote workers especially, Bieber is the kind of hidden option that rarely comes up in conversations about where to live, but probably should. Internet infrastructure in rural California has improved significantly, and the idea of owning a real home under $175,000 while working a job that pays city wages is the kind of financial equation that can genuinely change someone's life trajectory. Number 3. Boron, San Bernardino County, Mojave Desert. Now we're getting into genuinely surprising territory, and Boron is where this list starts to feel almost unreal. Boron is a desert town in the western Mojave, about 20 miles east of Edwards Air Force Base. The legendary facility, where NASA has tested aircraft for decades, where the space shuttle used to land on the dry lake bed, and where some of the most advanced aerospace engineering on the planet happens on a regular basis. That's your neighbor. Not a metaphor, literally your neighbor, and homes in Boron are around $172,000. The town itself is built around one of the largest borax mines in the entire world. You've probably seen 20 Mule Team borax at the grocery store without thinking much about it. Well, it comes from here. The mining operation has been the backbone of Boron's economy for over a century, and that industrial foundation gives the town a kind of economic stability that a lot of other remote California communities don't have. There are real jobs here, real employers. It's not just retirees and people escaping the city. There's an actual functioning local economy. But what really stopped me when I was researching Boron was the growth story. In 2010, the median home price here was $39,000. Today, it's pushing $172,000. That's a jump of more than 340% over 15 years. The highest percentage increase of any town on this entire list. So while $172,000 sounds impossibly cheap for California, it's actually the result of a long, dramatic appreciation from prices that were almost unbelievably low a decade and a half ago. The people who bought in Boron early made life-changing returns. The Mojave Desert landscape around Boron is the kind that divides people cleanly into two camps: those who find it hauntingly beautiful, and those who just see emptiness. The light at sunrise and sunset turns the sand and rock into something almost cinematic. The sky is enormous. There's a quietness to the desert that's completely different from forest or mountain silence. It's wider somehow, more absolute. And Edwards Air Force Base nearby means you occasionally get to watch experimental aircraft doing things that shouldn't be physically possible, just going about your normal day. Number 2, Johannesburg, Kern County, Mojave Desert. We are now in "you have to be kidding me" territory. Johannesburg is a small community in Kern County, right next to the equally tiny town of Randburg, deep in the heart of the Mojave Desert. And it consistently shows up with home prices in the $54,000 to $80,000 range. In California, in 2025. Let me put that another way. A base model Toyota Camry costs more than some of the homes in Johannesburg, a decent used pickup truck, a bathroom renovation in a San Francisco condo. We are talking about a price point that barely registers as real estate money anywhere in this country, let alone in California. Johannesburg was founded in the 1890s during a gold and silver mining boom that swept through the Mojave. At its peak, it was a genuinely lively town. Saloons, a post office, workers flooding in from all over looking for their fortune. That era is long gone, but the bones of it remain. There are historic buildings here that have been standing for over 100 years. Old mining equipment sits scattered in the desert like open-air sculpture. The whole place has a Wild West atmosphere that's completely authentic, not manufactured for tourists. The housing market here is volatile. It's important to say that honestly. During the pandemic, prices pushed above $120,000 as speculators and remote workers discovered the area. Then they dropped more than 25% in just 2 years before bouncing back a little in 2025. Small markets like this move in ways that bigger markets don't, and individual sales can shift the average significantly. If you're looking for stability and predictability, Johannesburg isn't the answer. But if you're the kind of person who sees a historic desert town with gold rush roots, open Mojave landscapes, and a house available for the price of a used car, and you think, I could do something interesting with that, then Johannesburg speaks a language that a lot of people are starting to hear: weekend retreat, remote work base, a tiny home renovation project, an investment in land that nobody else is thinking about yet. The possibilities are exactly as wide open as the desert around it. Before we get to number one, and I genuinely cannot wait to show you number one, drop a comment below and tell me which of these towns surprised you the most. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Not just because it helps the channel, but because we do this kind of research regularly and the next video is already in the works. You'll want to be here for it. Number 1, Maricopa, Kern County, southwestern California. And here we are. Number 1, the place that, when I first looked it up properly and sat with the numbers for a few minutes, made me put my laptop down and just stare at the wall for a moment. Maricopa is a small town in the southwestern corner of Kern County, about 40 miles southwest of Bakersfield, sitting in a part of California that most people drive past without stopping, if they pass it at all. It's an oil town, or at least it used to be. This was once a place buzzing with energy workers, derricks, money, and the kind of boomtown energy that California's interior was full of in the early and mid-20th century. The oil industry shifted, the population thinned out, and what remained was a town with deep roots, a strong sense of its own identity, and housing prices that make you do a double take. Median home prices in Maricopa sit between $172,000 and $195,000 depending on timing and what you're looking at. Some individual listings come in even lower. To put that in perspective, that actually lands, a new Ford F-150 with a few options can cost $70,000 to $80,000. A base BMW 5 Series is around $60,000 to $65,000. A loaded Ram 1500, the kind you see everywhere on California highways, can push $75,000 or more. A house in Maricopa with 4 walls, a proper roof, a yard with actual dirt under it, and a deed with your name printed on it can cost less than 2 of those trucks combined. That is not an exaggeration. That is the actual math. Now here's the part that made me put the laptop down. In 2010, the median home in Maricopa was around $61,000. By 2025, it had climbed to nearly $172,000, an increase of roughly 177% over 15 years. So while the price is still shockingly low by any California standard, it is not standing still. It has been growing steadily and consistently for a decade and a half. The people who bought here in 2010 nearly tripled their money. Not by flipping, not by renovating, not by doing anything clever, just by buying a house in a town that nobody was paying attention to and holding onto it. I want to talk about what Maricopa actually is beyond the numbers, because I think when we're focused on price, we sometimes forget to ask what you're actually getting. And the answer is more than you'd expect. The community in Maricopa has a tightness to it that's hard to put into words. If you've spent most of your life in a city or a suburb, people know each other here. Local businesses are still operating. There's a sense that this town has been through hard times and didn't fall apart. It contracted, it adapted, and it kept going. That kind of resilience in a small community is something you can feel when you walk around. And it's not something that gets reflected in a Zillow listing. The location, once you actually look at a map, is more connected than the name remote oil town suggests. Bakersfield is 40 miles away, for Californians used to driving, that's nothing. Highway 33 runs through town and connects you to the Central Valley in one direction and eventually toward the coast near Santa Barbara in the other. You are within about 2.5 hours of the outer edges of the Los Angeles metro area, which means access to major airports, major hospitals, major everything, without actually having to live in the madness of it. The landscape around Maricopa is rolling hills, dry golden grass, oil infrastructure dotting the horizon, and wide-open California sky. It's not the dramatic scenery of the Sierra Nevada or the Kern River Valley. There's no lake, no river running through town, no hiking trails with waterfalls. What it has instead is a different kind of beauty. The kind that's particular to California's working interior, where the land has a history of producing things and people built lives around that production. There's an honesty to that landscape that I find genuinely compelling. For first-time buyers who have started to feel like California home ownership is simply not an option. And honestly, looking at those $850,000 state medians, who could blame them? Maricopa is proof that the door isn't completely closed. You don't need a six-figure salary. You don't need parents who can gift you a down payment. You don't need to spend the next 30 years sending rent checks to a landlord who raises your rate every 12 months while you build exactly zero equity. For remote workers, it's an especially compelling case. If your job pays you a salary calibrated to San Francisco or Los Angeles and you can do it from anywhere with a decent internet connection, moving to Maricopa doesn't mean taking a financial hit. It means reversing the entire financial equation. You keep the income and slash the cost of living in one move. Is it perfect? No. The job market locally is limited. Oil, agriculture, and services are the main pillars. And if you need a robust local employment ecosystem, this isn't it. The town is small enough that if you're someone who needs constant social stimulation and urban energy, you'll feel it pretty quickly. The summers are hot, as they tend to be in inland California. These are real trade-offs, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But Maricopa sits at number 1 on this list, not just because of the price, and not just because of the growth story, and not just because of the community or the location. It's number 1 because it brings all of those things together in a combination that I genuinely couldn't find anywhere else on this list. The price is real. The history is real. The community is real. The trajectory is real. And the gap between what this town costs and what California normally asks of you is so enormous that it forces you to rethink what you think you know about what's possible. That, to me, is worth the number 1 spot. So that's the list. 10 towns scattered across California, up in the pine forests of Lassen County, out in the Mojave Desert, along the Colorado River, through the Kern River Valley, deep in the farming communities of the far north, where housing prices exist in a reality that feels completely disconnected from the California that shows up in the news and on real estate apps. The thing I kept coming back to while putting this together was how easy it is to write off entire parts of this state without ever really looking at them. We hear California real estate, and we immediately picture the coast, the cities, the prices that make your stomach drop. And those prices are real. The $850,000 state average is real. But California is an enormous, wildly diverse place. And the story is a lot more complicated than the headlines suggest. These towns exist. These prices are real. And for certain people, remote workers, retirees, first-time buyers willing to think creatively, people who genuinely value space and quiet over proximity to a coffee shop, they represent something that's becoming increasingly rare, an actual, legitimate path to owning something. If this video made you think differently about California real estate, share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you've made it this far and you're still not subscribed, come on. You've already watched the whole thing. Hit the button, join the channel, and be here for the next one. We're already working on it, and it's going to be just as interesting as this. See you there.